Conference. My name is Jack Rankin, and last week I was delighted to be selected to take back Warwick and Leamington, a key parliamentary seat for our party. Thank you. At the same time as I was being selected, we were hearing from the Labour Party about their vision to turn Britain into a socialist dystopia, reviving failed policies and ideas of a generation ago. Violation of property rights, the persecution of business, and a taxation system designed to punish at every turn those who try to succeed. What a contrast. We're here to talk about opportunity for the future, them the dogma of the past. They would leave our country weighed down with more debt and more waste, damaging small and large business alike, and it would be ordinary people in Warwick and Leamington and around this country that would pay. Without a strong economy, you cannot build opportunity for the future. You cannot provide access to high-quality public services, which building a stronger and fairer country demands. Too often, we are characterised by our critics as not caring enough about public services, perhaps with too much focus on the finances. But we are the party of the ladder of opportunity, and high-quality public services form key rungs on the ladder of opportunity. I became a Conservative in an unlikely part of the world because of the values I saw from my parents, running a small business all hours to give me and my brother Gus opportunities that they couldn't dream of. But to get there, they went to night school. That business and the opportunities created for my parents, for my brother and I, for the apprentices they employ, wouldn't exist today if it were not for high-quality public services. I was born severely prematurely. The doctors and nurses at Tameside General kept me alive and literally had to bring me back to life as my little lungs just didn't work. And I'm here today. Opportunity for the future. Conference, we are the party of the ladder, we are the party of hard work, and we are the party of a better life for you and your family, the party of quality public services. And I am proud that our government has committed a further £500 million for technical education and £394 million a week for the NHS by 2024. These are not numbers on a press release, but providing the rungs on the ladder of opportunity, opportunity for the future. Thank you very much.
Conference, I'm here today to talk about a very recent experience and to pledge my support for one of the UK's most cherished and valued public sector workers, our nurses. Earlier this year, my dad was suddenly taken ill and diagnosed with terminal cancer. My dad was a strong and healthy man who was very active in his local community. He was also a staunch Conservative, and he acted as my campaign manager in all the elections that I stood in. He loved campaigning regardless of the weather, and he was even out delivering leaflets for our local association the day he fell ill. Having gone into hospital with severe back pain, he ended up there for 6 months after doctors discovered a tumour which caused parts of his spine to collapse. Our lives turned upside down overnight. Our local hospital, Northwick Park in Harrow, became our second home. And whilst I will always be grateful to the doctors and consultants for the role they played in treating my dad, it was the nurses who were absolutely essential in keeping him alive. It was the nurses who were there to support him for every hour in the day, and it was the nurses who also took the time to find out if we were okay too. Over the last 6 months, I saw just how hard our nurses worked. I saw them work over 12 hours a day, often without taking breaks. I saw nurses deal with multiple conditions amongst multiple patients. But most importantly, I saw nurses do the most difficult and unimaginable tasks that we as loved ones could not do. Yet even in these intense conditions, I never heard a single nurse complain. Conference, as a party of hope and aspiration, where hard work is central to our ethos, I believe it is our duty to support and reward these valued public sector workers. Only by investing and empowering our public sector workers can we truly deliver a high-quality public workforce. But at the same time, we must acknowledge the pressures on the NHS. Our population is getting older, which means more and more complex needs. To address this, we need a plan. And that's why I am proud that on the 70th anniversary of the NHS, it was our party which provided an extra £20.5 billion to help the NHS be equipped to address these challenges and to reward our hard-working and life-saving workers. My dad is still not at home and he's still in care. We're not sure how long our dad will be with us, but I want to take this opportunity to thank all the nurses who cared for him for providing the extra time that my family and I had with him. I'm proud to stand on this stage and echo the sentiments of thousands of sons, daughters, mothers and fathers across the country to urge our party to continue to support our nurses and nurture them and help ensure that our NHS is not just one of the world's largest employers, but also one of the very best. Thank you.
Good afternoon, conference. Having spent countless hours over recent months, literally living and sleeping on a ward next to my 59-year-old mum who has early, advanced onset dementia, I'd like to speak on the amazing, often unsung work of so many NHS staff. As a nation, we are rightly tremendously proud of our health service, but until you experience something as life-changing as what my family are going through, you do not fully appreciate the world-leading quality of our public services. The emotional and physical damage that comes from losing a loved one to dementia is something I'm sure has touched many of the people in this room. I would like to pay tribute to the fantastic care and support my family have received from both the health service and adult social care teams. Many of these people have gone that extra mile to love and support our family. Just last week, a nurse arrived at my mum's bedside with a specially designed comfort aid for dementia patients, which she explained to me she had personally arranged to be delivered to lessen my mother's distress. This kind gesture meant so much to us, and while she can't express it, I know that it meant a great deal to her as well. But there is more to do. We need to continue to look at effective ways to improve the transfer of dementia patients from home or medical facilities into A&E. We need to ensure that there are more dementia-friendly nurses and staff who understand the real complexities of caring for patients with this disease. We also need to strive to support families as they make those agonizing decisions that we have had to make around the care of their loved ones. All of this is jeopardized by the Labour Party, whose economic decisions would place the care that my mum, that my family rely upon so dearly at great risk. Labour's 2017 manifesto was full of spending commitments, the detail for which was described in their own internal communications as implausible or entirely absent. Conference, if we are to maintain high-quality, world-leading public services, we must continue to put patients first, champion the success of those who work tirelessly to provide those services, and explore the reality of what this Labour government would mean for the future. The unfunded nature of Labour's promises will mean that it is the patients who ultimately suffer. I know that my mum doesn't know that I'm standing here today, or the elections that I have recently fought, but I know she'd be proud to know that I, alongside all of you, are fighting to ensure that our public services continue to receive the funding they require and that our amazing NHS staff continue to receive our heartfelt gratitude.
I would now like to call to the stage Suzanne Webb, followed by Gordon Gregory.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Webb and I'm the Area Chairman for Birmingham, Coventry and Solihull. Education is an investment in our children's future and in our country's future. By investing wisely in education, it ensures that our children and our grandchildren have the vital skills and confidences to get them through life and not just a career. A high-quality education system is about equipping children with the right skills, which will then have a positive effect on the economy, society, and the lives of people across our towns and cities. It ensures that every single child, and particularly those disadvantaged and female pupils, have access to the widest range of jobs. It is about giving children opportunity and choice. It is about unlocking doors. The introduction by this government of the English Baccalaureate, EBAC for short, is helping to raise educational standards in schools by focusing on an academically rigorous core curriculum that has been shown to improve both post-16 education take-up and future career prospects. When you consider cities such as Birmingham suffers from high levels of deprivation with deep pockets in all parts of the city, we have to focus on providing the educational skills and tools for children to have hope and aspiration and move cities like Birmingham on from such deprivation. It is about ensuring our children leave school with literacy and numeracy skills necessary for everyday life. EBAC does this. EBAC provides a framework to ensure that children, when choosing their options, do not make choices which would hold them back for years. I certainly did not know what I wanted to do when I was 15, and if someone had said I could have spent every day submerged in arts and creativity, guess what? I would have jumped at the opportunity. However, instead, I was fortunate to be equipped with the same educational curriculum to that of EBAC, and as a result, as a female, I've been able to smash that glass ceiling. This is because EBAC provides a level playing field and ensures equal opportunity for women to aspire to jobs which historically have been the preserve of men. Women are underrepresented at professional levels in the STEM disciplines, but since EBAC, there has already been a shift in women taking up these apprenticeships. This is fantastic news when you consider the phenomenal growth plan for the West Midlands, which is not just about 2022 and the Commonwealth Games. It is about the ambition, construction and feats of engineering to get us there and beyond. Education is an investment, and we should keep investing wisely in our children's and therefore our country's future so that we provide the skills for future generations in order to create job opportunities and prosperity for both women and men alike. Thank you.
Conference. My very standing here, speaking to you today, amazes me. But I have a lifelong stammer, and when I first began campaigning for the Conservative Party as a teenager, I could barely speak my name. Thankfully, at the time, leaflets required no such skill. But with a lot of work and perseverance, I became a surgeon in the NHS. I became a Bay local councillor and stood for Parliament for the first time last year. Thank you. This Conservative government has performed what could be described as an economic miracle. It has managed to treat the enormous deficit left by Labour. The size of the figure, 150 billion a year, still astounds me. It has helped the economy to recover and grow and increased funding for the NHS to its highest levels in history. And as we've heard, by 2023-24, it will have a further 20 billion a year, almost 400 million a week. There are tens of thousands more doctors and nurses since 2010, and a quarter more being trained. And yet, all we hear about is the financial woes of the health service, with hospital trusts in deficit and staffing shortages across the country. How do these marry? How can they both be true? Well, they do, and they can. The short answer is NHS inflation. NHS inflation has run at around 5 to 6% above general inflation since it was founded 70 years ago, and was pushed up beyond 7% under the last Labour government. I do not need to point out to you that this is unsustainable. If NHS funding were increased at even the lower figure, half of all government funding would have to be for the NHS within 20 years, and all of it by 40. by the time the NHS reached double its current age, every penny of GDP would have to be spent on it. Therefore, even with the vast sums of money that we have committed to the NHS, more than Gordon Brown or Ed Miliband or Jeremy Corbyn promised in their respective elections, the NHS will have less money than it needs. However, it has been shown time and again that Conservative governments are the best at delivering services within the realistic financial constraints. The introduction of market principles, Conservative principles, saved the NHS. In the first 2 years of Blair, they were removed, but quickly he brought them back. Even Lenin accepted the need for market principles in the early Soviet Union. Unfortunately, this hasn't quite reached the current Labour Party. Conference. The NHS will never have as much money as it needs. It is a mathematical impossibility. We need to be honest about this to ourselves and to the electorate. But the evidence is clear that the NHS is better delivered under the Conservatives, and keeping Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10 is its best chance of survival. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those excellent contributions. Opportunity is a key value of conservatism. People should be able to go as far as their talents and hard work will take them. A good education can do amazing things. Campaigning for good local schools has been at the cornerstone of my time as a Conservative. I first became a school governor when I was 18 years old, and that was some time ago. I'm incredibly proud that as a result of the work of the Conservatives in government, school standards have improved. School funding will rise to £23.5 billion in 2019-20. 1.9 million more children attend good or outstanding schools than in 2010. We have created 825,000 more school places. We are investing record amounts in our schools, and you cannot believe Labour's spin. Damien Hinds aspired to be an education minister from when he was first selected as a parliamentary candidate in 2005. I was happy to be part of that campaign. After successful spells in both the Treasury and the Department for Work and Pensions, it was fitting that he was promoted to Secretary of State for Education earlier this year. He brings with him a passion for improving the life chances of every pupil. As a father of 2 small children, I'm so pleased he is now focusing on children's early years, expecting more and expecting better for every child, whatever their background. Conference, please welcome to the stage the Secretary of State for Education, Damien Hinds.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, James, for that introduction. And, James said, a good education can do amazing things, and I certainly agree with that sentiment. And, whenever I ask anyone to think back to their education, what really made a difference for them when they were at school, I've yet to get the answer back. It was a smart board, or it was a textbook, or it was an exam or a scheme of work. The answer that comes back is always about a person. People talk about Miss Smith, Mr. Jones, Mrs. O'Neill, because education is all about that person standing at the front of the class. Those inspiring individuals, those 450,000 teachers that we have out there, they deserve and they have our admiration, our respect, and our thanks. And, since 2010, those teachers have made some very amazing things happen, assisted by the reforms initiated by my predecessors, by Nicky Morgan, by Justine Greening, and, of course, Michael Gove. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, in the international top 10 for primary reading. We have a reformed curriculum and examinations. We have thousands of schools that have been set free as academies. We've got 1.9 million more young people studying in good or outstanding schools. And the gap has been narrowed. The gap between the rich and the poor in attainment narrowed at every stage and every phase, from nursery school to university entry. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, that is a record of which you can be proud. And you should be proud. But you shouldn't be satisfied. We should not be satisfied until we can say that truly we have a world-class education for everyone, wherever they come from, wherever they're going, and whatever route they're taking through our education system. Until we've made sure that in every region of our country, in every group of our society, opportunity is truly equal. And of course, a world-class education depends on our investment in the future. And I say investment deliberately, because education spending isn't just public spending. It is an investment in the future of those children going through our schools, also an investment in the future of our country. And as you can see, we are strong investors in education when you look at us compared to other key comparator nations like the G7. And we've also been investing heavily in the capacity of our system to ensure we have a good supply of good and outstanding places in our schools. In contrast to Labour, who cut 100,000 places in our school system in the years running up to 2010, by the end of this decade, we will have added 1 million school places to our system. And we think that when a school is a good school, when it's giving a good education, and when it's popular with parents, that school should be able to expand so that more young people can benefit from what's on offer. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that includes if it is a grammar school. And we also believe that there is, and there always has been, a very important role in our system for faith schools. And we will continue to invest in free schools that have brought such diversity and innovation to our system. And I was proud to see another 53 free schools opening this term for the new academic year, as well as the hundreds already open. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can see here in the front row, and just give me a moment to introduce and to thank them, the brilliant DFE ministerial team, starting with Nick Gibb, who has been there from the very start and has done so much to drive academic standards in our schools, and particularly the focus on early reading and phonics. Anne Milton, with her infectious dedication to building up the skills base in our country, to apprenticeships and to colleges. Sam Jima, working alongside our excellent higher education sector and being such an effective voice for the student. Nadeem Zahawi, looking after the incredibly important areas of the early years and special needs, and in particular how we look after those children who are the most vulnerable in our society, those who are in care. And Theodore Agnew, Lord Agnew, our Minister in the Lords, who has brought his own expertise and experience from a leading multi-academy trust to his role as Minister for the school system. And we're also very lucky to be supported in Parliament by our excellent team of David Morris, Jack Brereton, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, our Commons Whip Amanda Milling, and James Younger in the Lords. Now, we are all spurred on by three key imperatives. The first of these is progress. Because we think, and I know you think, that it is self-evident that every generation should have better opportunities than the last. And you think that every year we need to raise our sights higher and we need to reach wider to make sure we unlock the talent, the potential in every single child in our country. Secondly, we know that on the education of this generation of children lies the future prospects and prosperity of our country. Because it's productivity growth that allows people to be paid a little bit more each year and allows us to afford more for the excellent public services which we all value so much. And third, preparedness. Being ready for whatever comes in an uncertain world. And yeah, part of this is about being ready to seize the opportunities that will come in global trade after we leave the European Union. But it's also about preparedness for the change that's happening in the world as we speak. And if you think about all the technological advances that are happening at the moment, if you think about artificial intelligence, voice computing, the Internet of Things, advanced robotics, any of these on their own could constitute a revolution. But right now they're happening all at the same time. And so we've got a pace of change that is truly unprecedented. Now, people sometimes talk about all this technological change in the world as a threat and something to be overcome, and there are issues to deal with. But it is also an opportunity for those who are ready, those who are equipped to take advantage of this change. And we need to make sure that this country is one of the countries that seizes technology and makes it work for us, not one of the countries that technological change gets done to. So, to deal with these challenges, to take the maximum advantage of these opportunities, now, more than ever before, we need a focused and sustained plan for education and skills. And that starts with academic standards. And the way that the knowledge economy has developed, and with the emerging superpowers of the economies of the East, we can't afford any let-up on academic standards. And we need to go further. And we need to make sure we're putting enough emphasis on the subjects of the future, for the global Britain of the future in this changed world. So we need to think about both the languages of mankind and the languages of machines. We also need to make sure that all our young people leave our education system with the basic essential skills that they are going to need with them in life, whatever path they end up taking, whatever job they end up doing. Central to that is English and maths. And we've made a lot of progress, actually, already on English and maths and making sure that that is spread widely, but we need to go further. And so today, I'm announcing 32 primary schools and 21 colleges, which will act as centres of excellence to spread best practice, respectively for early literacy teaching and for the teaching of maths at age 16 and above. And we also know, and any teacher will tell you, that good teaching and learning relies on a calm classroom. Pupil behaviour is absolutely essential. And so I'm also announcing today a further £10 million to support the spreading of best practice and knowledge on behaviour management and classroom management, so that can be very widely deployed. Now, I think we can say that there are genuinely large parts of our academic system which are truly world-class. Many of our state schools, large parts of our university sector. But there is another area which in years gone by has not had enough focus. And I'm talking now about technical and vocational education, which for decades has not had as much attention as it should. And you know, we've already made great strides forward, increasing the quality level of apprenticeships, and with more young people starting on higher level apprenticeships and even degree level apprenticeships. And you'll have heard the announcement yesterday that we're going to further accelerate the process of moving on to these higher standards, employer-set apprenticeships that young people benefit from so much. You've all heard of A-levels, right? Tell me yes. You've all heard of A-levels, but you may not yet have heard of T-levels. Has anyone heard of T-levels? Good. Well, those of you who haven't yet, you will do soon, because within a couple of years, we are bringing in this new qualification for 16 to 18-year-olds called the T-level, to be a direct alternative to A-levels, but focused on those key vocational subjects. And today, I'm announcing a £38 million capital pot to make sure that the colleges teaching those first T-levels from 2020 can do so with really world-class equipment and facilities. And you also know how important careers advice is and guidance for young people, and the key role that's played by careers advisors in schools. And so we're also going to be doubling the number of trained careers leaders in schools, so young people know about all those different routes. So they don't think there's only one route I can take to success, and they're aware of all the different career options available to them. We're also We're also going to be reviewing the higher level qualifications, those at so-called level 4 and level 5, that are the direct alternative to going to university for young people at 18. And we carry on our design work on the National Retraining Scheme, so that all throughout their lives people have opportunities to upgrade and change their skills, and so that lifelong learning stops being a phrase and starts being a reality. Now, qualifications are clearly an absolutely central part of education. They are, if you like, the paper passport that you leave school or college or university with and take with you into your career and into life. But they're not the whole of the story. And I invite you now to think back to the kids you were at school with and see if you can remember one that left school with nothing or next to nothing by way of GCSEs, or possibly, in some cases, O-levels, depending on our age. Came away with almost nothing in qualifications, but they still went on and did something really quite amazing in life. Can anyone think of that person? I'm going to suggest to you that quite often what makes the difference is something that we might call character. Something you'll never see on a certificate of education, but you know it when you see it. I mean things like determination and drive. I mean the tenacity to stick with the task at hand and the ability to bounce back from the knocks that life inevitably brings. Now, these character traits are closely connected with something I hear all the time about from employers, so-called workplace skills. Things like teamwork, commitment, the ability to look the customer in the eye and want to make the sale. And they're also connected, I think, to general health and well-being. And we're much more aware of this area, rightly so, in the education sector now than in decades gone by. And I'm pleased that we're going to be introducing mental health education into schools within the next couple of years. Now, actually, I don't think you can just walk into a class of 28 kids one day and say, today we're going to learn about character. Today we're going to do drive and determination. Of course you can't. But these things you pick up a lot from what happens at school. And in particular, I think extracurricular activities play an incredibly important part. So I'm going to be working closely with Jeremy Wright on the new youth performance partnerships and working with Gavin Williamson to make sure that more young people can get involved with the cadets. And for many young people, it's sport that really unlocks their talent and potential. And, you know, in the last few years, we've been able to commit to devote over £900 million to the primary sport premium. And now, working together with Tracy Crouch, the sports minister, we're going to be bringing in a new cross-government initiative for a school sport action plan to make sure that sporting opportunities, and we'll do this together with bodies like the RFU, with the Premier League and with England Netball, make sure those opportunities are spread as widely as possible and every child is able to benefit from what sport can bring. Ladies and gentlemen, like many of you, I've been coming to this conference for many years. And in all those years I've been coming as a YC, as an activist, a parliamentary candidate, and more recently as an MP, I think that around the corridors of conference centres like this and around the fringe events and the cafes and the bars, I think I've heard more conversations about education than I have about anything else. Because we Conservatives know that education is the key to the future. And it was the first One Nation Conservative, the original, Benjamin Disraeli, who said, upon the education of the people of this country, the fate of this country depends. And since then, it has been Conservatives who have most resolutely acted upon that. From Balfour to Butler, from Baker to Gove. But you know, as we stand here today in 2018, we can't take for granted what's been achieved since 2010. Because we learned from Liverpool last week that the Labour Party want to put it all at risk. They want to undo our reforms and turn back the clock. And I was thinking about what a parent would think as they heard the speech of the Shadow Education Secretary. When she said she wanted to take all publicly funded schools back into council control, back into what she called the mainstream public sector with what she called a common rule book. Well, you know, for a parent whose child has been thriving at a free school or an academy, how they must have shuddered when they heard those words. But ladies and gentlemen, we will stand up for those families. We will defend the right of those children to have an outstanding education. Because while Labour go off on their ideological journeys, that child only has one chance at their education, and they deserve the very best. So far from going backwards, ladies and gentlemen, we need to move forwards with our reforms. We need to ensure that the vocational and the technical are absolutely on a par with the academic. We need to make sure that we extend our reforms into all regions, all parts of this country, that all parts of our society have equal opportunity, that everywhere we see raised expectations and raised aspirations. And when that happens, then we will be able to say, this is a world-class education for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Conference. We now have the opportunity to hear from members again. I'm delighted that there are more slots to make contributions from the floor this year. I know this is something that members have raised with me, and as your senior volunteers, we have lobbied hard for this. It was great to see members speaking again last year, so let's get straight to member contributions. I'd like to call to the stage Samantha England, followed by Elliot Colburn, followed by Nabil Najir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference. I have worked in health and social care now for over 20 years, working in secure units, residential homes and hospitals. I've worked in the areas of mental health, learning disability and with the elderly, and in the last few years, specifically in leadership and management. I would like to talk about what makes a true difference to the care that people receive. I'd like to discuss the responsibility we all have in ensuring that our public services are most efficient and reliable they can be, and the importance that people actually enjoy working and feel a strong sense of purpose in the work that they do. From the top down, it is important we simplify the services and get rid of any unneeded complication. A huge challenge facing all public sectors is our declining health. Even with today's advancing technologies, illness and disease rates are on the up. Female doctors have up to 4 times the risk of suicide compared to people of the general population. And the Office for National Statistics figures revealed that between 2011 and 2015, 430 health professionals took their own life in England. Yet, these are the very professionals who went into the sector wanting to help. They wanted to give back. We need to ask, are we not creating more illness and disease by not addressing the pressure our staff are currently under? Small gestures that have the opportunity to make someone's day, like a sincere smile, a gentle touch of reassurance, are missed when staff are too stressed to feel what is needed. True connection with people at their most vulnerable time is an opportunity that cannot be missed. To look at the problems facing public services today, we need to look at the bigger picture. Organisations will fail if we do not have healthy people and healthy relationships in the workplace. We need to make it about people, not profit. So, rounding up, keeping it simple and using common sense is the answer. No amount of money will change anything if common sense is not there. Collectively, as a society, we need to stop moaning and ask, what can we do about it? Whether it is looking at our own lifestyle choices or getting out there in the community, there is always something we can do. Volunteers are the future, and in tense times and in times of crisis, we all need to muck in, offer support when we can, offer transport, can we offer a short support visit, or give some time to visit a local hospital ward. In short, we need to ditch the blame culture and replace it with a culture that supports all of society, getting back to community life where everyone feels valued.
Good afternoon, conference. I'm here because I started a new job this year. In fact, I started 2. In May, I was honoured to have been elected as one of the councillors for Cheam in the London Borough of Sutton, and just a few weeks ago, I began working for our wonderful NHS. And I began to think about how these two could overlap. We, not just as councillors and MPs, but as activists and residents, are there to help shape the direction of our local communities. In our cities, towns and villages, we engage with our neighbours to build stronger and safer places to live, work and raise a family. The NHS, which is one of the most dedicated staff anywhere in the world, work tirelessly to make us well when we fall ill and provide us with some excellent care. But in its 70th year, we are more aware than ever of the strains put on our National Health Service. Thanks to this government, we are seeing the NHS get funding it needs to continue to provide a world-class service. But we as Conservatives know that you cannot just throw money at a problem in the hope that it will sort itself out. The future of our NHS depends on facing up to these concerns. This begins by changing the narrative around health and care in this country, no longer solely focused just on responding to our needs when we fall ill, but also on fully integrating health with social care, prevention, and helping us to live healthier and more fulfilling lives. But just as we in this conference hall are diverse, so are the health challenges facing our various communities out there. Whilst one area might have a particular concern about children and young people's mental health, another might have an extraordinary demand on its cancer services. We can do our part to help shape local health priorities. Local government, of course, already has the opportunity to do this through health and wellbeing boards. However, I believe through empowering these further, engaging with our neighbours and with residents, we can respond to their needs and not just deliver great health care, but great health outcomes as well. So let's go out into our communities, help shape the future of our NHS, and to ensure that it is there for us for the next 70 years and beyond.
Good
Good afternoon, Conference. Earlier this year, we witnessed an unprecedented attack of foreign aggression in our streets in the form of the attempted murders of Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury. This incident caused shock and outrage across the country, and in many ways, it clarified some of the threats that we face. It came as a stark warning that we live in dangerous times. But at the same time, it brought out the very best in our society and our community. As a proud resident of Salisbury and as deputy chairman of our local Conservative Association, I saw our community come together in the face of adversity, standing shoulder to shoulder in the face of a dangerous situation. I also saw the magnificent work done by our public services firsthand, whether it was our police force who worked tirelessly to not just protect, but also to reassure our residents, or whether it was the hospital staff and the first responders who saved the lives of not just the Skripals, but also Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, who was first on the scene, or even of our local Conservative councillors who did everything in their power to support the city, its people and its businesses through providing free parking and a range of other support measures. The people of Salisbury rallied together in the face of adversity. And I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight that sterling work done by our public sector workers and to thank them for it on behalf of our association and of the residents of our city. While we're feeling in the mood for applause, I also wanted to thank the Prime Minister and the members of the Cabinet who travelled to Salisbury, showing solidarity and support for our community when we needed it. And the warmth and welcome The warmth of welcome they received from the people of Salisbury is a testament to just how much that support was valued. I also wanted to thank John Glenn, our local Member of Parliament, who was indefatigable in his defence of the city and ever present in providing support for its people, its businesses and its communities. And I can now pause for applause if you're still in the mood. Ladies and gentlemen, politics in this country is at a crossroads. We all know this, but occasionally an incident arises which transcends political divides and showcases the very best that our country has to offer. And this was one of those occasions. We have a network of public services of which we should be proud. Not always perfect, but always there to help and support when we need them. And as Conservatives, we must be robust in our defence of these public services, mindful that they are the backbone of our society, and as such, I am delighted to have seen the government's announcement of pay rises for over 1 million public sector workers and the scrapping of the public sector pay gap. This is just one way of showing our gratitude and support for the people doing some of the most important jobs in our country, who I know from experience are always there when we need them. It is the least we can do for the people who do so much for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call to the stage Callum Cook, followed by Alexandria Hayward.
Well, good afternoon, Conference. I'm the Deputy Leader of South Kesteven District Council in Lincolnshire. And as local public servants, we strive to deliver high-quality public services every day. It's in our DNA. The challenge is not so much delivering high-quality services today, tomorrow, or even next month. It's about how we deliver them in 6 months and 6 years' time. And not so long ago, I would have said 10 or 20 years' time. But in terms of services, that's now far too long. In under 6 years' time, millennials, like myself, will be approaching their late 20s with families, homes, and careers. And a large proportion of our customer base will, for the first time, be a generation that has only ever known the internet, smartphones, and social media. And one thing is certain, that high-quality services will look different in 2024 than they do in 2018. And unfortunately, the public sector's mantra isn't so much Facebook's move fast and break things, as much as move slow and whatever you do, make sure nothing gets broken. And at South Kesteven District Council, we don't want to break things, but we do try to get it, which is why we are in the process of changing. And by changing, I don't mean tweaking or putting shiny digital covers on old analogue systems. We're having a fundamental rethink about change and what a district council can be and what it can do. And the exciting thing is that it isn't a project, programme, or a bolt-on. It's starting to happen organically. We're starting to think differently. And a great example of this is Lightbox. So lots of companies have their own version of Lightbox, and effectively it's where the interesting stuff happens. And I will give you the 1-minute elevator pitch before I finish. So Lightbox is our in-house design bureau, an open house for ideas, innovation, and creativity. It's a fluid team that comes together to fix, improve, and implement new things. It has the license to think the unthinkable, and a clear mandate to make us feel slightly uncomfortable. In fact, if they don't, I'm not really interested. And Lightbox is open to anyone and everyone in our organisation, and it does tend to attract the best and brightest from all levels, many of whom are bursting with ideas and enthusiasm, but who previously had no outlet, in what can sometimes be a sterile environment for new thinking. And our Lightbox team is now actively working on numerous projects, from supporting local charities to working with EY on some of the most cutting-edge intelligent automation projects currently underway. So I'll leave you with two thoughts. Firstly, that EY, an international company with a 250,000 strong workforce, is working with a district council that most would struggle to identify on a map. And secondly, that we don't plan to keep the fruits of our work to ourselves, and we will be very happy to share with any of you what we have learnt so far. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference. Refuse collection, safety on our streets, medical care when needed. To the refuse collectors, the police service and all the NH staff, a huge thank you from all of us. These are some of the public services that unite us. Unite us to demand high-quality public services delivered as value for money. These services and many more are all funded by the taxpayer, in fact all of us. But it is who controls the purse that is the critical issue. We know that Labour can't. The Conservatives inherited the dreadful mess that Labour left the country in. And Corbyn is showing no sign of any control over McDonnell. 500 billion spending, control back to the unions, and threats to the gig economy. And as for the Liberal Democrats, I know from my own experience as leader of the Conservative group on Three Rivers District Council that they can't be relied on. Their track record in administration has been to sell off the entire council's social housing, spend all the proceeds, and now let the chief executive go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, but still on a 5 days a week salary. Imagine that incompetence on a national level, though a little difficult with only 12 MPs. The provision of high-quality public services are delivered as value for money can only be delivered by people with conviction. People who care about their family, their neighbour, their community and the country in which they live. And these people are Conservative people. Conservative men and women. Actually, definitely we could have more women. Go women to win. This country needs you. I would ask anyone here not yet involved in a parish, district, borough, county or city council to step up and get involved. Step up to be an MP. We need more elected Conservatives on every level dealing with public services. We do not want Chuka Umunna to be left singing "Who Let the Dogs Out." This country needs their Conservative government, and long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those excellent contributions. Conference, the Conservatives have supported the NHS free at the point of use from its very beginning. And in its 70-year history, the Conservatives have run the NHS for more than half its history, 43 out of the last 70 years. And this year, we've all got behind our long-term economic plan for the NHS. That's 20.5 billion pounds of funding boost, as well as a plan to make sure that every penny is well spent. Our Secretary of State, Matt Hancock, will be telling us more about how we are making sure the NHS is there for all of us when we need it. In person, not just via the Matt Hancock app. But quite seriously, artificial intelligence and data can certainly benefit the NHS. And conference, someone who knows more about how to turn these potential benefits into reality is Tabitha. This summer, Tabitha was appointed as the chair of the government's new Artificial Intelligence Council. It's tasked with increasing growth in the AI sector and promoting its adoption in other sectors of the economy, such as health and social care. Conference, please welcome Tabitha to the stage.
Hello, everybody. My name's Tabitha Goldstorp. I'm the co-founder of Cognition X. We're on a mission to help companies adopt artificial intelligence safely. The NHS saved my mum's life. In 1985, she very nearly died after giving birth to me. She survived because of the incredible people in the NHS who rescued her. Their training, compassion, and commitment to saving lives means everything to our family. It's now 2018, and the strains on the NHS continue to increase, and the job gets harder with each passing year. I'm here today because I believe that new technologies can play a key role in supporting and empowering the many men and women of the NHS to continue their incredible work. For example, in situations like that of Afia Ahmed, who gave birth to her daughter last year and contracted acute kidney injury. Within minutes, rather than hours like my mum, her nurses were alerted to the situation by their app, built by an AI company, DeepMind, that supports nurses to get the right care to the right patients at the right time. The Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, has embraced the potential of this new technology and AI as a tool to enable innovation. He understands the opportunities as well as the risks and helped foster the strong AI community that we see today in the UK. He, when Secretary of State for DCMS, along with his cabinet colleagues Greg Clark and Jeremy Wright, appointed me as the chair of the UK government's AI Council. The council convenes experts from industry, academia, and the public sector to advise government on the use of AI in all walks of life. I am confident that with a better use of data, smart analytics, and the appropriate applications of AI, we can start to reinterpret the causes of illnesses, detect disease, discover new drugs, and build a healthcare system that can operate holistically. It's widely acknowledged that AI can revolutionize the provision of healthcare. And with the scale and the excellence of the NHS, we have a unique opportunity to lead the world in establishing best practices for safe AI and ensure the benefits are available to everybody. And so, with that in mind, it is my greatest pleasure to introduce the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock. Do we fist bump?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that welcome, and it's a real privilege to be the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. And I love the NHS, and I wanted to talk today about what we're going to do to make sure that it's always there for you and your family, in the way that it's always been there for mine. Last year, my sister Emily had a near-fatal brain injury. Her life was saved by the NHS at Southmead Hospital in Bristol. And last month, I had the chance to go back with her to Southmead and to say thank you. They took us into the helipad, where she'd been taken off the air ambulance, and then they took us in through A&E, where they'd stabilised her, and then into the intensive care unit. And as we walked in, standing there, directly opposite her, was the consultant who'd looked after her. And until that moment, she couldn't remember anything about it. But when she saw him, she knew exactly who he was, and she went over and gave him a great big hug. It was an incredible moment. And when she thanked him, his reply will always stick with me. He said, "It wasn't just me, it was the whole team." And that sums up our NHS. Now, I love my sister, and the NHS saved her life. So when I say I love the NHS, I really mean it. But the truth is, they would have done this for anyone, for my sister, for yours. And what an honour it is to be in a position to be able to say thank you to the guy who saved your sister's life. So my heartfelt thanks is not just from one brother to one doctor, or from one family to one hospital. No, the NHS is there for us all. And I want to say this, from everyone in this nation, to every person who works in the NHS, we salute you, we value you, and from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. I'm very proud of the NHS for what it's delivering today. Cancer survival rates are at a record high, strokes are down by a third, deaths from heart failure down by a quarter, and the NHS is doing more than ever before. 39,000 more clinicians looking after patients than in 2010, 12,000 more nurses on our wards, 14,000 more doctors, 1 million more seen by cancer specialists every year, 2 million more operations, 3 million more treated in A&E. And the result of all this, at every age and every stage of life, people are healthier than ever before. That's what our NHS is delivering under this Conservative government. But anyone who knows the NHS also knows there are serious pressures because our population's ageing and we're treating more people than ever before. I know this. It's clear to anyone. Social care is under pressure too. I know the pressures, and we're going to address them because I want us to make the NHS the best health service in the world. And today I want to talk a little about how. First of all, it can't be done without more money. The Prime Minister has committed an extra 20 billion over the next 5 years. 20 billion pounds. It's the largest, longest financial settlement in the entire history of the NHS, and it'll underpin the NHS for the long term. And when people ask that we spell out our domestic agenda, you go and tell them this. We've taken this decision. We've made our choice. We've responded to the public mood and the clear needs of the service with boldness. And let me say this policy is not without cost. I know that, and I know that it's audacious, but I profoundly believe it to be right, and I'm proud to serve a Prime Minister who believes it to be right too. And this money comes on stream next year. But I want to help the NHS through this winter too. I've already provided extra funding for hospitals to make upgrades to their buildings to help deal with the pressures this winter. And I can announce today that I'm making an extra £240 million available to pay for social care packages this winter to support our NHS. We'll use the money to get people who don't need to be in hospital, but do need care, back home, back in their communities, so we can free up those vital hospital beds and help people who really need it get the hospital care they deserve. But I know that money alone isn't enough. We need to make sure that money is well spent by reforming the NHS and the social care system too, to make sure that it's always there for you and your family. So along with the NHS themselves, we're writing a long-term plan to guarantee its future. And I'm hugely grateful to my departmental team who are working together with me on these reforms. Steve Barclay, Caroline Dinage, Jackie Doyle-Price, Steve Brine, James O'Shaughnessy, Wendy Morton, Alex Chalk, and Maggie Throop. It's great working part of this team all pulling together. Thank you. And I tell you this about pulling together, we as a party, we've got to pull together too. Because we saw with Labour last week the frightening prospect for our country if we don't. They've got nothing new, and every time that programme's been tried, it's failed and brought misery on millions, and it is our duty to make sure it doesn't happen again. One of the major reforms we need to see is bringing new technology across the health and care system. And obviously, I've been able to consult widely about that in the last few days, because CCHQ's given everyone my phone number. Now, of course, introducing new technology can be bumpy, as we all know. But the potential benefits are huge. And I say this to people who tell me that technology isn't always perfect. Of course it's not always perfect, but that's not a reason to reject new technology. That's a reason to improve new technology and keep making sure we get the best use of it. But the NHS is still the biggest buyer of fax machines in the country, maybe even the world. And this is putting a greater pressure on our NHS staff. And in some hospitals, a nurse still goes round with a clipboard to find out where beds are in use and where they're empty. It doesn't have to be this way. In Derriford Hospital in Plymouth, where I was on a night shift last week with Johnny Mercer, they've developed an in-house programme, so everyone knows where the empty beds are all the time. Patients get better treatment, and it's so much easier for staff. So we're going to sort out the technology in the NHS, because our NHS deserves better. Now, of course, it's not just about sorting out the IT. It's also about seizing the huge opportunities. Let's take just one example. Today, it takes an average of over 5 years to diagnose rare diseases. 5 years, with endless tests and trial treatments. But thanks to the 100,000 Genomes Project, now by combining your own gene sequence with machine learning on others, you can be diagnosed in days. And what's more, from just a swab of saliva, there's the potential to design a drug specifically to treat your unique biological code. In this city, the University Hospital is growing replicas of people's cancers in a lab to test individual drugs to see if they destroy the cancer before subjecting the patient to that drug. Now, this increases the chances of cure, and it reduces the agony of unsuccessful treatments. It is unbelievable technology, and it's happening right here in Birmingham. And I'm so proud that it's thanks to a decision by David Cameron and this Conservative government that this is happening at all. So I want to go further. And today I can announce that we're expanding our 100,000 Genomes Project. So 1 million whole genomes will now be sequenced, along with a long-term vision of 5 million. And I want to make it available to all. And what this means in practice for you and your family is this. From today, our brand new NHS Genomic Medicine Service will roll out access to genomic testing. So for everyone with a rare cancer and for all seriously ill children, it'll be available on the NHS. So we'll have tailor-made treatments and tailor-made drugs that are the best fit for a patient and not a best guess. We're leading the world, and I'm incredibly excited about this technology just because of its sheer potential to change lives for the better. It's just one example, but it shows the kind of reform we need to make sure the NHS is the best health service in the world. But we all know that new technology is not enough to make the health and social care system sustainable. We need other reforms too. We've got to reform the system so we spend more time on prevention, not cure, with more integration between health and social care and more treatment closer to home. And what I mean by this is that the era of moving all activity into fewer and fewer larger hospitals and blindly, invariably closing community hospitals, that era is over. I want more services. I want more services closer to the communities they serve. And I want us to empower people to have more control over their own health too, whether it's the rising risk of obesity or the scourge of gambling addiction or the growing challenge of mental illness. These problems and the increasing demands they put on our health system, they can only truly be solved by prevention as much as cure. We can't go on treating them like medical problems. We need to look after people as people, not just patients, and foster a culture that's less popping pills and Prozac and more prevention and perspiration. And that includes acting on new evidence and interventions to support people with obesity and other conditions, whether it be through prescribing exercise, the arts, or nutritional advice, rather than yet more drugs and medical interventions. Or in the language I prefer to use, it's common sense. Now, these reforms of social care are needed too, to make that sustainable for the long term. So people don't have to fear the risk of losing everything if for a reason outside their control they end up needing care when they're old. Reform of social care is long overdue, and we'll publish a paper later this year setting out the progress that we can make to give all people confidence and dignity in old age. And of course, we can't do any of these reforms without our GPs. Our GPs are the bedrock of the NHS. They're everyone's first port of call. And because our GPs are the bedrock of the NHS, we need more of them, better supported, better equipped. Prevention of ill health is nothing without primary care, so we back our nation's GPs every step of the way. Now, I believe that this need for reform doesn't simply lie with the NHS or our social care system. We too, as a party, must be driven by the imperative of reform. We've always been at our best when we've been reforming, when we look to the future. Who abolished slavery in the 19th century? Who delivered equal votes for women in the 20th? Who delivered equal marriage in the 21st? Not the Whigs or the Liberals or the Labour Party, it was the Conservative Party. And throughout history we've shown that we're at our best, where we're in favour of the future, not fixated on the past. But it's more than that. We can't just be comfortable with modern Britain. We've got to be the champions of modern Britain. Pro-jobs, pro-business, pro-prosperity, helping out everyone who wants to achieve their potential. We can't fear the future, we've got to embrace the future. We embrace the future or we embrace defeat. The Conservative Party is the party that's always understood the spirit of this great nation. And that spirit today calls for opportunity for all, without fear or favour. Now more than ever, we've got to give it all we've got, because our opponents are not resting either. So let us unite together. Let us embrace our NHS, let us embrace reform, and let us give it everything we've got and serve this great nation that we love. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Now let's hear from some more of our party members. Conference, please welcome to the stage Joseph Lee, Richard West, followed by Chris Loader.
Conference, I have a confession to make. I used to be a Liberal Democrat. I know. I joined them when I was young and foolish, thinking that they cared or could deliver opportunity. How very wrong I was. In May of this year, I stood as a candidate in the local elections and lost by 45 votes. Close. Although I lost, I'm proud to be a mixed-race man of Jamaican origin who stood as a Conservative candidate. Throughout the campaign, I spoke to hundreds, if not thousands, of local residents. So what were residents saying to me on the doorstep? They were concerned about school standards for their kids. They were concerned about housing for their friends and family. And they were concerned about the future of the NHS. If you listen to Labour, you'd think the situation is just doom and gloom, but the reality couldn't be further from their spin. On housing, in January, we Conservatives delivered investment of 44 billion to deliver 300 new homes. Bar 1 year, house building is at its highest in 30 years. We've got more to do, but who can argue with that progress? In April, we Conservatives announced over the next 2 years, school funding will rise by over 2 billion to a record high of 43.5 billion in 2019-2020. Our kids are getting the higher education they deserve. And on the NHS, in March, our Prime Minister, Theresa May, announced a £20 million boost for our amazing and dedicated NHS workers. It's only right that those who keep us fit and healthy have seen an increase in their pay packet. It's we Conservatives who deliver record public sector investment. But it's not just about the money. It's about what the money does. It helps you, it helps me, and it helps the most vulnerable in our society. We've raised the personal allowance threshold, lifting millions out of paying income tax altogether. We're the ones delivering a strong economy with record numbers in employment, giving people the opportunity to prosper. Conference, I'll leave you on this. I know whatever lies ahead, we'll continue to deliver for everyone in the UK. But we have a battle ahead of us, which is to defeat Labour's twisted politics. We can do this, but we have to do this together, led by a phenomenal Prime Minister. Let's keep delivering opportunity for everyone in our great country.
Good afternoon, Conference. I work as a general practitioner in a rural community, the heartland of our party. My colleagues and I are proud to provide a personal service to our patients at home and in the surgery. This is what the NHS is all about. It remains, and it is why it remains popular 70 years after it was created. My practice covers 100 square miles, which means that when I go and visit patients in their homes, it can take all morning just to visit them. It also means that some of my patients have a considerable distance to travel to the surgery, even with the minibus that we provide for them. NHS Digital is changing our experience and our expectations of how we access and use healthcare. It is going to be a major challenge for the NHS over the next 10 years. It will bring some real benefits, but it will also come at a cost. and I want to make sure we get the benefits for all of my patients. At present, my patients are excluded because our clinical system regularly crashes. Half of my patients do not have access to the electronic prescription service because NHS Digital has not commissioned it for them. The suggestion that I use Skype and video consultations is a wonderful one, but due to the lack of super-fast broadband and decent mobile phone coverage in many rural communities, I am unable to do so. There is a digital deficit in the NHS for rural patients, which is a source of great frustration for many rural GPs who want to deliver a first-class service to their patients. We need to level the playing field with our urban colleagues so that we can bring traditional general practice into the modern world, keeping what is good, but not making changes just for change's sake. Digital health is at a crossroads. It could be either a great benefit to the population and the NHS, or it could shift resources from treating the unwell to treating the worried well, leading to increased expectations for worse outcomes. We need to encourage those with minor, self-limited conditions to care for themselves so that we can effectively use the limited resources to treat those with serious illness. My appeal to you when thinking about NHS digital services is to remember the whole country, including remote and rural communities, not just those with good internet and mobile phones coverages in urban areas. Thank you.
Conference, good afternoon. I'm Chris Loader. I'm the chairman of the West Dorset Association. And today, I would like to share with you my thoughts about a service that is vital to our society and to our economy, and that is our railway. So many of us are dependent upon the railway in the United Kingdom, whether that is for work, to get to school, or to go and visit family and friends. But so too, of course, are British businesses to move goods and people across the country. Since the mid-1990s, our railways have grown at an unprecedented rate. Passenger numbers have doubled, and so has investment. But so too has the pressure on the network and its operation. Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party say that our railways need to be in public ownership. This is a great example of how the Labour Party is blinded from reality by their own ideology. Why? Because Jeremy Corbyn clearly does not realise and does not understand one thing. The tracks, the signals, and their operation are all within the public sector today, and that public sector organisation is Network Rail. But the nation's railway is in desperate need of real structural change. The timetable problems across the country over the last 6 months have clearly demonstrated that the industry is too complex. But it is the European Union's legislative shackles that have forced this complexity by requiring the artificial separation of track and train for too long. When I voted to leave the European Union, I did so because of the opportunity it will bring to this country. In the case of the railway, I wanted the opportunity for our government to completely change the structure and ensure its integrated operation, focusing on one thing only: the delivery of service for passengers. I have worked for my railways for my entire working life, beginning my career as a train guard, and I can see firsthand the opportunity presented by the recently announced rail review to make this change. Misalignment of incentives and pressure of crowded trains and tracks mean our passengers have seen a downturn in reliable and punctual train services. The performance of the railway is at its lowest for 13 years, and millions of fare-paying passengers and thousands of the most loyal and dedicated railway staff now expect that to change. It should be the mission of this Conservative Party to make our railways better and fit for the future through a revolution in rail. And it should be the vision of this Conservative Party to realise the opportunity that we have now to put our railway on the right track to make it not only the best it ever has been here in Britain, but the best railway in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'd now like to call to the stage Louise Calder, followed by Faye Purbrick.
Hello, Conference. It's wonderful to be here in Birmingham today and an absolute honour to be addressing you. I want to talk to you today about quality and delivery. Stay with me, Conference. I realise these are not two words that generally set the world alight. But, as we saw in the recent local elections, they are the ones that inspired people to turn out to the ballot boxes. I'm a councillor in Wandsworth, still proudly blue after 40 years. Wandsworth, that is, not me. A little while to go yet. But I am very proud to say that our residents kept faith with us, despite loud promises from Owen Jones and Momentum, and let us know that they wanted us and trusted us to deliver on the promises that we made. I want to give you a very quick example of some of the quality services we offer in Wandsworth. Libraries. Not only has Wandsworth kept all of its libraries open, but in my ward in Battersea, Northcote, we will be providing a new library and community hall, securing these for the next generation, working with local residents, schools and community groups to develop these and ensure they best reflect their needs. These are the sorts of quality services that people look to us to deliver. But before I was privileged to stand up here and represent Wandsworth, I represented Clapham Common in Lambeth, just a short walk across the common. But what a difference that short walk makes. In Labour-run Lambeth, their attitude to libraries was not to renew or to extend, or to listen to the many people who opposed their closure. Instead, many of these spaces are made into gyms or cafes, and all that for just double your council tax. Because we don't just provide quality services, we provide value for money. But it's not just quality I want to talk to you about, it's delivery. And again, bear with me, Conference, I know that's not a sexy word, but it does matter. And it matters because this government have delivered, and we need to be rightly proud of that. They have delivered more council houses, more than double the number of council homes per year than under Labour, more jobs, 1 million is down by unemployment, more people working in the public sector. There are now 14,000 more doctors and 12,000 more nurses in the NHS than in 2010. So we've shown we don't just make empty promises, but that we deliver on them, not just in the past, but right now. But what does this all actually mean? As a party, we do love our statistics and our figures. But what this actually means is that a mum can take her baby to a GP 7 days a week, that in those libraries, there's a kid discovering J.K. Rowling or Philip Pullman, that for every job created, there's someone saving up to buy a flat, start a business, buy an avocado. So yes, we are offering great quality services. Yes, we have a history of delivering on them. But more than that, I believe people vote for us because they know that we aren't just delivering, but we're delivering for them. Thank you, Conference.
Good afternoon, Conference. Problems, problems, problems. All around our public services, all we hear about are problems. Not enough money, too many people using our services, can't recruit key staff. Can't. But is there a different way to look at this? Yes, it's hard to deliver high-quality public services. Yes, we could all do with some more money, better skills and less demand. But no, it's not all about problems and can't. Adult social care is broken. I've heard that one. Children's social care is £800 million overspent. Yep, got it. Too many councils can't cope. I'm living that one. And the NHS is facing another winter crisis. It's all true. And yet we all, and I mean all, deliver high-quality public services. I'm a cabinet member at Somerset County Council, and like so many others, we face huge challenges. Let me pick just one example. By the end of the next decade, more than half of all adults in Somerset will be over the age of retirement. Half. So we're clearly unable to deliver high-quality public services within adult social care then? Wrong. In Somerset, and despite that age time bomb, our adult social care is underspending. Yes, you heard that right, underspending. We've done this by going back to our roots, engaging with residents, businesses, and communities. So if we can do something like that in an area as complex and difficult as adult social care, can we do more in other parts of the public sector? What was the success in Somerset? In a word, together. Somerset County Council did not turn things around on its own. It worked with doctors and the NHS. It worked with sole traders and business. It worked with voluntary and community sector. In our highly successful pilot in the rural area of West Somerset, we saw more than 200 micro-businesses created to provide the care and support needed. Isn't that what we as a party are all about? But one other thing that this country is very good at, a gold medal winner, top of the tree, is red tape, bureaucracy. We want people to help, but we make it difficult for them to do that. For example, look at the number of hoops we make charities and voluntary groups jump through so that they're able to do the work that we want and need them to do. Madness. So let's look again at some of those issues that I highlighted earlier. Yes, there is clearly a national issue in children's social care. £800 million overspent doesn't lie. We need to work together nationally as one to find the answer, across boundaries, across interests, and do this together to deliver high-quality public services. In Somerset alone, we have 5 districts and 1 county council. Clearly, the answer is unitary status, working together to deliver high-quality public services. We have overlapping health and social care. We help one another when it suits and have a spat when it doesn't. Clearly, the answer is to join up, jointly commission, share building, staff and opportunities to work together to deliver high-quality public services. Somerset believes that future success means working together. We all need to join up, spread the message. Together is the way, you guessed it, that we can deliver high-quality public services.
I'd like to thank all our contributors today. It's definitely a step forward for our party to bring these back into the normal running of conference. Conference last year, we saw Conservative mayoral candidates win elections across the country. Tim Bowles in the west of England, James Palmer in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Ben Hoochin in the Tees Valley, and Andy Street right here in the Midlands. From day one, they have been working for their communities, delivering for their electorate and demonstrating that our devolution agenda works. From the Midlands engine to the Northern powerhouse, local people know best. We've seen over the last few years how certain Labour mayors are failing to deliver on their promises they made to their local people, spending more time publishing themselves, fighting within their party, or trying to take us back to square one on Brexit. Meanwhile, Conservative mayors across the country are delivering their promises. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to hear from a panel of Conservative Metro mayors, chaired by our Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner, Kate Bone. Please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, conference. It's great to be here. It's my great pleasure to introduce a collection of mayors. We were just discussing outside what the collective noun would be for a group of mayors. So answers perhaps on a postcard later after conference. So to begin with, just as a bit of an introduction, because we never like to assume everybody knows about your area. To my right, I have James Palmer, who is the mayor for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. James, would you like to tell conference a bit about your area and some interesting facts?
Yes, well, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, it's the boundary of Cambridgeshire as you would know it. 1 million people, extraordinarily successful university, life science, technology, agriculture and engineering industries. We are extraordinarily successful as an economy, but we have issues as well around deprivation in the north of the area and infrastructure problems and housing issues in the south. So my remit is to solve those problems, build the extra houses, sort out the infrastructure and make sure that those people in the north of the county get to share in the wealth of the south. It's an exciting place to be and I'm absolutely delighted and very proud to be Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and we're working very, very hard to solve the problems in our area.
Great, thank you very much. So we're moving on very swiftly to Tim Bowles, who is the Mayor for West of England. Tim, similar, give the conference a quick intro to your area.
Katie, thank you very much. And I always start with a very brief geography lesson, if I may, because I think it's really important that we get people to understand where the West of England is. The West of England is a really dynamic region. We are based around Bristol and Bath, two incredibly global cities, really well known, but we also include both North East Somerset and South Gloucestershire. So we've got a really, really compact, tight, functional region that's really successful economically. We are the home of aerospace. We have incredible companies like Airbus, GKN, Rolls-Royce. We're leading the world in creative arts, in nuclear science, and doing so much around how our universities interact. And we are regularly voted one of the best places to live and work in the UK. And in terms of our digital economy, again, constantly at the top of the leagues in how we're leading in digital productivity. There's so much going on in our region. It is such a privilege to represent everybody there. And this is a great forum to start sharing that with everybody here.
Fantastic. I think my bags are already packed. It sounds brilliant. So moving on, Andy, you are obviously well known to conference. You've been on the stage a few times. So Andy Street, who's Mayor of West Midlands, would you like to tell us a bit about your area?
Yes, well, those of you who were here on Sunday heard me say a little bit about the West Midlands. Indeed, I think you even saw a map and one of our youngest councillors in the country talk about what's going on here now. But it stretches from Wolverhampton through the Black Country, of course, the heart of the Industrial Revolution, where modern economies arguably started, through Birmingham, Solihull to Coventry. And one of the three cities in the West Midlands, Wolverhampton, Birmingham and Coventry, was once the capital of Old England. And I will let you decide which one it was. There's a clue, of course, if you think about which are modern cities. So one was that. What we are now is, we think, a very dynamic, inclusive, area of the country, and perhaps one of the things that really stands out is we are statistically the most diverse region of the country. So to be a Conservative mayor in the most diverse region of the country is something that gives me extra special pride.
Great, well done. And finally, but not least, Ben Houchen, who's the Mayor of Tees Valley. Ben, tell us a bit about your area.
Well, thank you. It's very difficult to follow Andy, and there's clearly a lot of support for him in the crowd, as you would expect. It's been a brilliant conference so far, so well done to Andy and the team and the conference team for doing that. I represent an area called the Tees Valley. It covers everywhere from Darlington, Stockton, Middlesbrough, Hartlepool and Redcar. Redcar you might have heard of recently advertised itself very, very well in The Mighty Redcar, the BBC TV series. If you haven't seen that, please go away and watch it. It will show some of the fantastic things that Redcar have to offer and the people that we have in our area. The area that I cover is historically known as Teesside as well. Some of you may know it as the World Centre for Steel Pricing for many, many decades. It's also the location of the world's first modern chemical plant. And what we're looking to do in the future is redesign ourselves so we're ready for the 21st century. So that's using the skills and the industry and the know-how that we have to be ready for the 21st century. So that's clean growth, that's processing, that's energy, it's things like hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, things that we've done very, very well previously, but reskilling ourselves so we're ready for the future. And as well, it wouldn't be right for me to come here and not talk about what is the single biggest regeneration opportunity in the UK through the South Tees Development Corporation, the first mayoral development corporation to be established outside of London. The Prime Minister was kind enough to come and launch that last October, and we're now seeking investment, and we're already speaking to many investors from the many tens of millions of pounds up to the billions of pounds. So we're seeing a huge drop in unemployment. For the first time ever, across the North East as well as the Tees Valley, unemployment has fallen below 5%. In the Tees Valley, it's at 4.3%. With regret to suspect, Andy, it's better than the West Midlands at the moment. And it's better than London. And it just shows that there are places that, historically, if you weren't aware of them, are doing a lot better than expected. And it's largely down to this government and also down to the establishment of the concept of the Northern Powerhouse. And it's cool to be Northern again.
Great. Thank you very much. So, I'm kind of aware we're all sitting here and we're facing outwards and I'm trying to get a conversation going. So I want to kind of dig under the bonnet a bit and find out a bit more about you as people. Because I'm sure there'll be people watching and in conference here today who are quite kind of, what are these people like? How did they get here to be a Conservative mayor? What was their journey? So we just heard a bit from you, Ben, but coming back to you again, how did you get to be a mayor and what's your sort of backstory?
Well, I, for my sins, was a solicitor. I was in private practice for 7 years, straight out of university. And then I decided that that wasn't for me, so it really wasn't a good fit, and I'm not sure I'd ever go back. But it set me up with some great life skills, and I went to start my own business. And I did that for 2 years before getting elected in the Tees Valley, which was a great surprise to many people. But for those of you who've heard of the name but don't know who I am, it's probably because you've heard of my uncle, Keith Houchin, who scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final in 1987, Coventry, against Tottenham. And the claim to fame, as I understand it, is it's the only goal to win goal of the season from a header. So even though I bask in that reflective glory, it's a badge of honour that I wear with pride.
These two are there was a big sigh there from my two colleagues here. No pressure then, no pressure. So Andy, coming to you, we know you've sort of had a shop or something. Would you like to give us a bit of your background as well, how you got here?
My background, I am a Brummie. I grew up here, went away to run a little shop, as they say, John's, and I'd always been interested in politics, but I'd never been sort of summoned to it in any way. And then this role was created. And I thought, stop talking about doing something for your home and actually get on and do something. And I happen to think this type of job, which is like sort of an executive mayor, you feel responsible, accountable for the outcomes, that suits someone with a business background. So I chucked in my previous career and stepped forward to do this, and thanks to some of the people in the hall, I was given the chance to do it and for us to show what we can do in an urban part of Britain that, just like in Ben's case, you might not have expected the Conservatives to win.
Great. And Tim, how about you? How did you get to be a Conservative mayor?
It's a good question. I think they're great stories we've all got, and I think we've got lots in common. None of us are career politicians. We've all come about this journey, I think, from slightly different directions. I grew up in rural Somerset. I was born abroad with a family that did a lot of international, based around the world. So I grew up in rural Somerset, very close to the border of our region, but grew up with a father who ended up running the village post office and stores, and my mother was a health visitor. So I'd like to think a really good, solid background in terms of understanding both the needs of small business, but also the impact of the health service and so on in our communities. But for me, it was, I moved to the region about 30 years ago, and like lots of people, you often talk to people about things you should do, and in my village, somebody got involved and said, well, would you be interested in standing for the parish council? And ultimately I did, because I was interested in trying to make a difference to where I lived and the people who were part of my community. And as a result of that, I then became a district unitary authority councillor. And ultimately for this role, what really excited me about this was the way in which this role allows you to have interaction with business, with both local and national politics, but also in terms of so many of those other soft skills, and we'll probably touch on those later. So that's what ultimately attracted me to this role, and it really is, and I know whenever we meet, we all reflect on what a really, really great opportunity it is for each of us to really make a difference to the futures of everybody in our region. So that's why I got involved, and it is a brilliant job, and I know we're all really loving the opportunity to make such big differences to people.
And James, how about you? What's your background?
Well, I was a farmer and a milkman, and I worked in the family business for many years. And
Was this before it was cartons? Was this when it was bottles?
This is doorstep delivery, 2 a.m. starts, glass bottles, and freezing cold mornings and wet days, and I really miss them. I generally do. But I was I was very proud. It's a job I was very proud to do. My father was a milkman. His father and my great-grandfather all delivered milk in our hometown in Soham in Cambridgeshire. I'm a Cambridgeshire lad. And I was asked to stand for the district council when I was 37. And my wife said, well, you're always moaning. Why don't you go and do something about it? So 10 years later, this opportunity came along, and I was very fortunate to be given the nomination of the party and run and be elected by the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to be mayor. And as said by all the guys here, it's a huge privilege. And the most important thing, and as I said, I'm not a career politician. I sometimes look at when I'm described as a politician and smile inwardly and think, well, am I really? But the reason that I love this job is because I'm passionate about my county. I'm passionate about the area that I live in, and I desperately want to make sure that everybody who lives there gets the opportunities to thrive and do well in life.
So we've got to understand a bit more about all of you and the reasons you're doing what you do, and I think it's really helpful. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who can identify with a lot of what you've said as well. So opportunity is the big word behind you, and that's the hashtag for the conference. Someone getting very excited there when we said that word. So aspirational opportunities. What's the aspiration for you in your area? So Andy, if I start with you.
I hope this won't get me beaten up by my 3 colleagues next to me, but it's really very simple, the story of the West Midlands. This was a place that thought it could lead Britain. If you look at the sort of economic history of Britain, we did. But actually we lost our way really quite badly. And if you go around some of our region, you still see some of the scars of that. So really what this job is all about with the team across the region is saying, how are we going to get back to our potential of leadership? Now, it's not just about the economy. That you've got to have a thriving economy to achieve that. We're taking good steps towards that, but that's what enables you to then address some of the social issues, the social mobility, which has been poor in some of our areas, the lack of aspiration. So it is all about giving everyone a chance to fulfil their potential in life. And just this morning, with the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Esther McVeigh, we announced that across the West Midlands, we would have what we're calling an apprenticeship promise, where we will commit to making an apprenticeship available for every young person in the West Midlands. And we're confident...
Great.
We're confident we can now do it, given the newfound strength of the economy, and we're also very grateful for the work that DWP are doing with us. They're putting in particular people they're calling progression coaches in our job centres to take those people who perhaps haven't got the self-confidence, the skills to move into even those roles, to actually get a first chance in life. So your question is right at the heart of what we're trying to do.
Great. And Ben, how about you? Aspirations for your area?
I think the journey's similar to as Andy described, actually. Teesside was an area, as I already described, that did kind of build the world. Dorman Long Steel Company in Teesside built the Sydney Harbour Bridge. We exported steel around the world, and we had a fantastic reputation for it. We've always been a globalist, outward-looking area, and we did lose our way. We lost it with the loss of the steel industry. We lost it when ICI was broken up. But actually, from that, we've got a real opportunity for a much more diverse economy. So I'm very much focused in my role on allowing Teesside to take its place back on the global stage and being able to grow the economy. I very much focus on growing the economy, which will hopefully allow businesses to thrive and grow, which means jobs are going to be created, which will mean that people have more money in their pockets to provide for themselves and their family. And the other thing that we want to do, because it's all very well and good getting people into work, and as I've said, there's so much positive news coming out of the north of England and the northeast on the unemployment rate, but we then have that further challenge that we don't want that to be low-paid work. We want to get them through that wage gradient. We want to make sure that they're long-term, sustainable, well-paid jobs. And when you give that very clear message, as Andy said, an area that people would suggest is traditionally Labour, that resonates with people, irrespective of whether they vote Labour or Conservative. They want somebody who's going to stand up for their area and help them to get on in life through jobs, through economic growth, that then has all of those socio-economic knock-on effects for their families and their local communities.
There's a lot of nodding going on. I can see nodding going on in conference as well. James, how about you? What are your sort of aspirations and the opportunity?
Well, I think it's interesting. Both Andy and Ben have spoken about opportunities and aspirations, and what we're not really talking about is job creation, because the government the policies are creating jobs. So it's not about trying to start from scratch here. We're already creating jobs. Certainly in my area, job creation is very, very high. The investment is into the futures of people who currently are missing out on those jobs, and it's about a skills agenda that gives opportunities for all. I speak a lot about spreading the wealth of the south of Cambridgeshire into the north, and it's making sure that through better connectivity, better infrastructure and better investment into skills and education, that we can see those areas of deprivation that we have rise up, and we end intergenerational deprivation. So I think it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be in politics, exciting opportunities through devolution allow us to invest to the entire community and create opportunities for all. So there are many ways we can do this, and government are being very, very helpful, but I do believe that the devolution deals that we all have are creating situations that could probably not have solved the problems that there are.
Great. Tim, west of England, aspirations for your area, because it's quite a diverse area, isn't it?
It's a wonderful area, yes. We're very lucky that we're very successful in a lot of areas. We touched on aerospace, in high-value design, engineering. So for me, it's really about how we're going to develop the region so everybody starts to benefit from the very positive economic growth we've got from the job opportunities. We know what our job projections are likely to look like for the next 20 years. So I'm really passionate about making sure that everybody in our region gets the opportunity to benefit from that growth. So for me, I want to make sure that we're going into schools, and I recently launched a careers hub where we're now going into schools to be able to share with pupils coming through the opportunities in our region. So they get excited about what we're doing, excited about what our businesses need, and they see that chance to really develop and meet the needs of the region. So I'm really, really passionate about making sure our businesses continue to succeed, but everybody in the region is going to have those skills and that opportunity to access those.
So while you're on the business piece, I mean, is there a recent policy announcement that absolutely plays into that for you in your area?
Well, there is, and I was really pleased. I was so pleased to be able to be in the hall on Sunday for the opening of conference. It was a brilliant opening, and it was really, really well focused. And for me, the message that kept coming through from all of our brilliant speakers at the time was about business and how we are the party of business. So for me, I was really excited about the news about support for small businesses. I've talked about Airbus, GKN, Rolls. They're vital to our economy, but that supply chain that feeds into all of those brilliant businesses is vital. How our creative sector, our creative industries have got so many small, even micro businesses. So for us, being able to have that ecosystem to support small businesses is vital. And whilst that will be part of the National Industrial Strategy, we're all going to be involved in our local industrial strategies. So for me, business are vital as partners in how we're writing our local industrial strategy. They will be at the forefront of how that works. They were at the forefront of our launch of it recently, and it's been really positive how businesses are looking to engage with us to make sure we continue to drive that growth.
And I know for you, Ben, as well, there's changes apprenticeship, I think you were saying earlier to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's less of a sexy announcement, but to business, it was a huge announcement. Only yesterday, I spoke with both Nissan and Hitachi, who welcomed with open arms the change to the apprenticeship levy to allow to apply some of that levy down their supply chain to make sure that they can cluster through the supply chain in their local areas. That adds huge benefits to the skills, but also into the supply chain that then solidifies things like logistics costs, etc. So that's is massively welcomed as a reform to an existing policy, which I think signifies a mature government able to change tack. But it's not a complete reform, actually. It's refining an already good system, and businesses have welcomed that with open arms. It's something that it deserves a lot more coverage. And it's also really welcoming to see that as a result of that change, we're seeing Hitachi and Nissan speaking to each other about how they can bring that effect together to help mutual supply chains in engineering and STEM subjects that benefit both businesses, one based just outside of my area, and obviously the fantastic Nissan plant that was established by Margaret Thatcher, the most productive car plant in the world, I believe. So, no, it's brilliant.
He likes his facts, doesn't he? He keeps looking at you, Andy, there. I sense a little bit of competitive edge going on.
I know he's quite protective, but we do have a big automotive sector in the North East as well.
Which we supply.
So, Andy, since we're on you, is there an announcement that's been made at conference around policy that really gets you excited for your area? Or is there something that
There are lots.
Yeah?
I mean, there was the announcement on Sunday afternoon about the West Midlands being the home of mobility as a service. It sounds a bit sort of anarchic, but actually it's really important. It says this is a place that's going to think about how we use transport in the future. And if you look to the Black Country industry, some of our work on driverless pods there, for example, it's really exciting. New technology.
What's a driverless pod?
Driverless pod, they were driving up and down Broad Street for you to go on yesterday. So it will be definitely a vehicle of the future where you'll be able to go on a sort of bespoke journey, which just you want, that it does not involve driving, it's just sort of programmed around at the events around you. So it's brilliant. And then two other things.
Yeah, sure.
There, of course, was a really important announcement yesterday that genuinely excites me because, of course, we're going to host the Commonwealth Games here in 2022.
Really?
James Brokenshire announced the money that the government is putting in to help us build the Athletes' Village, another incredible sign of this government support for this region. I mean, a real big roll of the dice by the government. Huge, you're right. And then the third one, that it wasn't an announcement, that was an event on Sunday morning to kick conference off. Chris Grayling, who's been another brilliant supporter of the West Midlands, he was down at what will be the terminus of the first stage of HS2, down at our station at Curzon Street, digging the first ground for HS2. And that, again, is an incredible commitment on behalf of the government.
Literally, physically digging it himself?
Literally, he wanted to go in the digger, but we didn't quite do that, but the sod was turned.
Fantastic. And James, how about you for your area? Is there a particular announcement that you're very excited about?
Well, again, there's lots that affect us, and many things that have been announced at conference that are very positive. I'm really keen on the Festival of Innovation that the Prime Minister has announced. I think it's something as an area of exceptional talent in life science and technology, the capital of life science and technology in Europe. I feel that we can feed into that and we can really showcase the brilliance of, certainly Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but the brilliance of the UK to a world audience. And I'm very excited at the chance to be part of that. And we will definitely make sure that Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are an integral part of the Festival of Innovation. And I think it will bring more huge opportunities, that word again, opportunity, more opportunities to our region.
Great. So, absolutely, please do. I wanted it to be more of a conversation. So
Andy got three, so I should get two.
I like this competitive edge here.
The other thing that I think is going to be massively welcomed, especially across large swathes of the north of England, is Sajid's announcement, the Prime Minister's announcement about control of migration post-Brexit. You know, I think for too long, while we are a massively pro-business party, business have had a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card with the fact that they've been able to use import of cheap labour at the lower end of the unskilled market, whereas now we're going to have to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that those businesses are investing in local people and local communities and their existing workforce to take advantage of the great opportunities, not just in my area, but across the patch, rather than importing labour and then not addressing those socioeconomic issues of people, for whatever reason, have felt left behind.
I think it's a really good point, and probably one that hasn't been properly understood. So really good to explain. So is there anything else that strikes you, gents, while we're talking through any of the other announcements that we haven't quite covered off? Because there's a lot, isn't there? It's not all about the B word here, this conference. There's lots of opportunities for everybody in their areas. Andy, I can feel you're about to say something.
Tim can go first.
Where should we start? You're absolutely right. There is so much that's been announced, but one of the things that really is important to us in our region is in terms of how we're going to deliver new homes. It's vital for both the economic growth, but also to make sure that people are able to have access to homes that they can both afford, and we've got the right mixed way tenures around those. So the news around actually making sure we're delivering homes, and there's announcements like that, I'm sure that'll resonate for everybody. That's vital for us in our region because we have a huge need for homes. We're doing a great deal of collective work around our joint spatial plan and the way in which that feeds into a joint transport plan with government, and we're getting great support again from the Secretary of State for Transport and from the Housing Minister on that. So for me, that's really exciting news about how we're going to look to make sure we're delivering, building new homes even quicker.
Yeah. What strikes me, to be honest, is that people say from outside this conference, oh, it's all about Brexit. And of course that's so important. But it is not all about Brexit, because everything else is about strengthening our communities, our economy. However, Brexit concludes. Yeah. And what I've heard this week from speaker after speaker is the government is full of ideas and practical things that will drive all those agendas on. And you've heard examples from my friends about that. From our point of view then, it's actually quite exhilarating, because I come away from this thinking we've got more sort of firepower, more tools coming down the line that we can use to improve our own areas. So actually, it's been a good experience to hear about all that.
That's great. And we were talking earlier backstage about skills and how important that is in all your areas. So did you want to, anybody enlarge a bit more on that, the education side that you have that comes under you as mayors?
Well, we have a post-16 skills agenda, and we've already begun investing into not just skills for post-16, but it's also important to remember that it's on-the-job training as well. And we've invested significant amounts of millions of pounds into on-the-job training for care workers to allow them to take advantage of better opportunities from their position. I was at a launch about 3 weeks ago in Peterborough where the first 4 graduates came through. Each of them said that the on-job training that they had received through the skills of the Combined Authority had changed their lives and changed the way that they could actually, the jobs that they could apply for were great. One guy had applied for 50 jobs and not got them. His first job he applied for after his training, he got. And he said, it's just transformed my life and the life of my family. And I think we have to remember that 74% of the people who will be in work in 20 years are already in work. So whilst it's extraordinarily important to invest in the skills for young people, post-16, further education opportunities, technological universities. We're working on creating a university in Peterborough, which is going to be highly technical, creating people to feed into our industry in engineering and in agritech and in science and these key areas that we need to feed our economy. But we also must remember that it's on-job training as well, something that really has fallen away from over the last 30 or so years when it's been so easy to get cheap labour from abroad. We need to rely on those young people and the people who are already in work to give them the chance to train to a higher level of work.
You're all nodding. Jump in.
Should we do this in orderly fashion?
You're being very orderly.
We all know that skills are about how we're going to make sure our businesses succeed, but for me it's also about how everybody in the region benefits.
Sure.
I'm incredibly fortunate to have 4 brilliant universities. They are really at the pulse of so much we're doing. But for me, there's tons of collaboration now going on around universities, how they're developing new initiatives, new ideas and startups. But we've all touched about apprenticeships. We all work together on that space, and it's vital we develop those different types of apprenticeships. But also for me, and I touched on it earlier, it's about being able to go into schools as well. Because a lot of kids in schools today are our next great talent pool. So I want to make sure we're exciting those people in schools, but also that we've got skills provision that will allow people to reskill at different age groups. So again, it's about those opportunities. It's about how we use our skills powers, soft and our actual devolved powers in really delivering those opportunities for people.
So that's an interesting point. You talk about soft powers of mayors, and you know, as a police and crime commissioner, there's a lot that we talk about our convening powers and the soft powers that we have to bring partners together and collaborate. Have you got any sort of thoughts around that or comments?
I think it's something that can be driven quite easily. There are a smallish number, but growing number of powers that we do have, and we have control over budgets for specific areas, whether it be transport, education coming down the line, and others. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to move into the space, because a lot of the legislation doesn't tell you what you can't do. And therefore, if it tells you, as long as it doesn't tell you you can't do it, then move into that space. And one of the things that we've seen, and it's one thing that I've run with and I've mentioned at every single event at conference, so I can't go past this event without mentioning it as well, is something that is without my remit, but we're running a really strong campaign on the establishment potentially of free ports post-Brexit on the basis of our outcome and settlement with the European Union. Now, that is way above my pay grade. Thankfully, I don't have to negotiate Brexit. I don't envy anybody of that task. But as a mayor, it would not be right if I wasn't preparing my area for any eventual outcome. Now, one of the big opportunities out of Brexit, even if there is a much looser relationship with the European Union than some would want, means that actually we can have free port status that would create thousands of jobs, add millions, if not billions, across the UK if we were to establish them across the country. And disproportionately, they would be established in areas in the bottom quarter percentile of council areas, so disproportionately benefiting people who felt left behind by the Labour government in the early 2000s. And so that is not within my remit, but that is something we get a huge amount of traction in. We can build campaigns because you use the fact that you are in effect the titular leader of an area, you use the bully pulpit of the office that you hold to be able to drive real change, even outside of the narrow remit that is our defined geographical area.
And that must be the same for you, Andy, because coming from the private sector, I mean, that's something that's very common, isn't it? And
yeah. So people often say to me, is this job very different to the private sector? And I say no, and they look slightly bewildered because politics is in one box and business is in another. It's not like that at all. And it's because, part of it is because of this soft power thing. Yeah. There are certain things you have to do in this job. They're written on the job description, but there's a hell of a lot more that you are invited to step into, to be the sort of front man, the representative, the champion, I call it,
and
of the regional bit. Of course it's exciting. So I'll just give you one small example of it. We'll talk about lots.
Well,
at the end of conference tomorrow, I'm going off with James Brokenshire to India. And we're actually
now
going.
He's name dropping.
No. He says he's going with me. No, not true. So we're going off to India, on Air India, to fight for the case of having direct flights between Birmingham and more Indian cities. Now, it doesn't say that on the job description, but it's something where I can step forward as the representative, the spokesman, and just make things happen. And let's be really clear, it was a team game. Everyone brought it about. But the bid for us to bring the Commonwealth Games here was something where, again, you step forward as a representative. And so that role is actually really good. It also has some challenges in it as well, because the citizens think that you are accountable for almost any problem. I don't mean that they know it is your job description. They don't, but quite rightly, they say, you should have a view on this. As our leader representative, you should do something about it. And that is actually fair.
You feel that that's fair? You're happy with that one? Because that's quite difficult for people.
I am happy with that. Not that it's then my authority to do something, and you often have to work with the person whose authority it is. But I do think it is a fair expectation for someone who's standing as the representative of a whole region to have a view on and at least be able to influence others who have direct responsibility, if that's the case as it is.
Because, I mean, it's a big role, the mayoral role, and a lot of public don't really understand it. But that convening soft power cannot be underestimated, can it?
No, it can't. And Andy's right. You have to step forward and be the representative where necessary, and make sure that you are accountable to the public. That's the reality of it as we are. But you know, my job is just the same as the other mayors, is to be an ambassador for our region. That's my job, and my job is also to sell our county beyond the shores of the UK and make sure that everybody knows how successful we are and that we're the place to do business. And if you want to be successful, come to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So that is a soft power that comes with the job, and there are many others as have been mentioned before. But you know, to the general public, it's the same with all levels of government. It's the council. Oh, you know, I get this a lot. Oh, you're on the council, just sort that out. Well, of course, I'm a mayor, so I'm not on a council, and the combined authority is not a council. But the reality is, we know people who are, and so then we can talk to them about the issues that the general public have, and that's a privilege as well for us, and I'm happy to do that, and always happy to stand up for my community.
Great.
I think and everything we've all talked about, we were all having similar experiences. One of the really great soft powers that I thoroughly enjoy is the ability to bring people together, convene people, get people working. You know, we're a combined authority, getting other people to start working in more combined ways. We've recently been holding sessions with all of our voluntary service groups within our 3 major authorities areas to try and bring people in that sector together so that they can have some input and feed into our local industrial strategy. And when you start meeting some of those incredible organisations, many of whom I've been lucky enough in my previous roles to be involved with and help and support, but when you're able to bring people together in those sort of areas and see and respect and get a real hands-on of what people are doing and being able to champion and promote some of those things is priceless. You're right, it's not written into our job roles, but we get so many opportunities to bring people together, to convene things. And again, it's one of those things that I really enjoy. And you hope by doing that, it'll really make differences to people's lives, above and beyond what you're doing in the core aspects.
So that's working with your other organisations in your role, but how about engaging with the public? Is that something that you find that comes quite naturally, or do you find that quite challenging in what you do? Now they're all looking really worried at me, because they weren't sure I was going to ask this one.
I actually really enjoy going to parish meetings or to...
and you do go to parish meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm asked to go, I go. And it's a great way of keeping in touch with people and just going into a room that's full of people just to talk to them about what you're trying to achieve and let them know what you're trying to do. There's a lot of, we're involved in a world where we have social media that tells a lot of things that aren't happening, and we have newspaper editors who probably don't really know what they're talking about. It's the only way that you want, not all of them of course, but the only way you can really engage with the public is to actually go out and speak to them. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. And I make sure that if I get asked, every single time I get asked, I go along.
Yeah, I get the feeling, Ben, that you don't mind talking to the public and engaging with them.
I think you're in the wrong job if you don't want to talk to the public. I mean, as a politician, you want to change your local communities. It goes back to the heart of the mayoral role, and I'm sure this is the same for all politicians, but the opportunity, the same as Andy, that I'm able to represent an area that I was born, lived in, and have grown up in. My family, on certainly my father's side, have been in the same area for 150 years. I mean, there is no greater pride in being able to represent the area that is truly your home community. And, one of the things that I made a conscious effort to do, and I'm pleased that it's being well received, is that I go and visit at least 2 businesses every single week, and I try to get to grips with what their problems are, what the advantages of their business are, why they're succeeding. And then the final question is always, what can we do to help you grow, help unlock your potential? And people appreciate that. It's not often, because on a local council level, they're not geared up to really help local businesses. Their inward investment strategies are limited, their budgets are stretched, but they appreciate somebody coming around, taking the time. And it really allows you to get under the hood of what's actually happening in the local economy, because it's all very well and good speaking to the big employers who employ 2,000-3,000 people, but actually going into the high street and speaking to the family business that employs 3 or 4 people, that's where you really understand what a local area is about.
And would that engagement directly drive your strategic thinking?
It does. It massively influences it. Our strategy on small business, the fact that we're looking to set up, and we have approval for a £13 million fund to help businesses where first-tier lenders and other funds are not available. So, for example, there are a huge number of very good small businesses between £2 and £5 million turnover, and businesses have been set up by local families, but they've kind of taken it to the end of its life cycle. But you know what? There's really good middle management, and they'd love to be able to take it on further. Now, first-tier lenders, would want some sort of equity from those people. You also find that any of the European funds exclude any sort of management buyout role, but actually there is a potential role of a very focused fund to be able to say, well, actually, let's, as a community, put our backing in that middle management, allow them to take that business over and change that £2 to £5 million business into a £10, £20 million business, taking on more people and establishing itself in the community for decades to come. So it really does influence the policy making, because unless you're at the coalface, how can you understand what people are facing in their lives, what the problems they're facing? And, that's what politics is about, isn't it? It's about engaging with people and as a leader reflecting in your policy the feeling of local people.
Absolutely. Andy, have you got any reflections on that? Public engagement, is it what you anticipated it would be?
Well, I suppose the straight answer is yes, and I love it. So you can't start off this reflection session by saying we all feel a privilege to represent our areas and then not say you've got to get out there and tell your story.
Very true.
So we have a slightly, I hope, slightly unusual way of doing it. Just 2 Wednesdays ago, I was at a pub in a suburb of the city here, 250 people, and they can ask me whatever they want. We've done it. We did the first one in Coventry, brilliant, on the local radio live. So that's how we take it out. We just try to say, come along and challenge me on anything. And I don't mind admitting, the adrenaline rush is there when you don't know what on earth someone is going to say.
It's quite challenging sometimes, isn't it? I think often the public, though, I think that some of the issues that I certainly get confronted with by the public is that they see politicians as out of touch. And so, clearly, Conservative mayors, you're keen to get out amongst people and find out what they're up to. So Tim's nodding away.
Oh, absolutely. And the initiative and the idea of Conservatives taking politics into the pub, I think, is something we should all adopt. So everybody in the room, I'm sure, we really must make an initiative there. What I really enjoy, and we've touched on it before, is I meet a lot of businesses. We're incredibly lucky to have both startups and all scales. So I really do make a lot of effort to be meeting not just the business leaders, but also people who are working in those businesses and try and understand both their big challenges, but those little things, what feeds in, what's really important to them, makes such a difference. But also I touched earlier about the voluntary sector. I really try to, wherever I can, in terms of charities, being able to meet them, because you meet some brilliant people and some great stories, but it's a great way for us to explain, if you like, what our roles mean to people. Because I think that's one of the challenges when we're all in brand new roles, is explaining just what being a regional mayor means and what it means to you. And with 1 million people in my region, it means 1 million different things. So finding ways in which you can constantly be out there talking to different people, whether it's in their workplace or through other things they're involved, is vital. And again, it's something I love doing. I've always been in positions to do that, and it's really important for me.
So any more reflections on because you were all elected of May 2017, wasn't it? So still fairly new. Andy, any reflections on the role so far?
Yes. How many am I going to share is another matter. I think perhaps the fairest reflection is we could all sit here and I guess all politicians do this. And just as James said, when I see Andy Street politician, I think that's not me, that's somebody else. I still think of myself as a business person who's changing career. But my reflection would be we could all sit here and say, this and this is going right. But my goodness, there is an enormous amount that is still to be done. And if I look round all of the boroughs of the West Midlands, look at the issues around rough sleeping, if I look around the issues around youth unemployment, I look at the issues around mental health. Now, it doesn't mean we're not really being valiant in addressing them, but it means that we've got to be rooted right on the ground, that this model is supposed to make a difference to the practical things people worry about, and we have still got a lot to do to demonstrate we can do that. As to the introduction, I happen to think we're wired as a group to deliver. That's the sort of gene of this role. And I happen to think the Conservative mayors are demonstrating that, which is great. But please, I don't want anyone to think the job is anything other than started.
And you've preempted my final piece to sort of wrap up. So I see our clock is ticking down. It was just really, yes, there's some great aspirations, there's opportunity there, but there are challenges ahead. And just a quick reflection on any of the challenges, if as you see them?
Our challenge is to fulfil what we've promised to the public that we can do. And my challenge is, I've challenged myself to provide a metro for Cambridge and a metro for the south of the county. I've challenged myself to spread the wealth across the area. That's what I said to people I would do, so I've got to damn well do it. And where I need government support, I will go to government for government support to achieve that. Yeah, there is a challenge. Andy's absolutely right. We're 18 months in. We are not the end game here. And some of the projects that we're all working on are not 4-year projects or 3-year projects in some of our cases. They're 20, 30-year projects. You have to look at politics in the long game at some stage, and that's, I think, as mayors, we're all trying to look for the longer benefit for our communities rather than just short-term hits to get to the next election.
I think for me, we've all talked about that long game. I think what's really important for us all as trailblazers and advocates for devolution is that we can show not just central government but everybody else in the country how devolution is going to deliver, and that I think is our real challenge. So we are all committed to working together to do that. It's really important government continue to support us. We're getting great support in lots of areas already. We've got to show government now that we can deliver and keep driving that investment. And I think it's a great challenge for all of us.
Ben, any reflections on a challenge?
Yeah, I think there'll always be more things to do, irrespective of how successful or how poor we are. I try not to reflect. I think we've got a finite window, and I'll reflect when I'm either retired or kicked out by the general public. But I want to reflect a bit more nationally in that, yes, we have challenges, and yes, we're all talking about the great things going on in our region, but once you put Brexit to one side and you go around here or you go out into the general public, into the regions, there's a hell of a story to tell, not just in our regions, but across the country. And if and when we put Brexit to bed, we need to get back to that domestic agenda of high employment, wage growth, foreign direct investment, manufacturing foreign direct investment at record levels. I mean, we've got a great story to tell, and it can be frustrating walking around the conference when all the media want to talk about is Boris or Brexit and what the PM's doing, when actually, look at what Greg Clark is doing with the industrial strategy. Look at what James is doing with housing in the MHCLG. Look at what Esther McVeigh is doing in Department of Work and Pensions. There is a brilliant story that at the moment is being overshadowed by Brexit. We need to come out of that shadow and we need to talk about the brilliant things that the Conservatives have to offer this country.
Thank you, Ben. You saved me having to sum up. Ladies and gentlemen, our 4 Metro mayors. Thank you very much, gentlemen.